Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Ditro Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagawa Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Pe Eho Shude Shulad Soha Yamo Shude Shude Soha Ramo Shude Shude Soham Mo Shude Shude Soha Bamo Shude Shude Soha Eya Ram Lam Bam Shude Shude Soha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Soha Om Ye Dharma Hetun Prabhava Hetun Teshen Tathagato Yawa Data Teshen Chayo Niroda Evam Vadi Mahashrama Naye Soha On Chönam Tamche Gyule Jung Te Gyu Deshin Shekpes Gyula Gokpa Kaimba Gechon Chembo Tekesum Gechon Chembo Jingilo Gechon Chembo Ngodrup Sol Gechon Chembo Trashisho. Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsochi Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonamgi Trola Penchre Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsochi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyaps Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchira Sangye Druparsho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, there are some subjects that we listen once, we listen twice, and somehow we understand. Somehow listening to that once or twice is enough for us to understand its meaning, and we somehow are able to grab at it quite well. Then there are some other things that we need to listen once, twice, 10 times, 20, hundreds, thousands of times maybe, until it actually goes inside. I believe the reasons of these things that take so long time, for example, when you talk about emptiness, the lack of inherent existence, is mostly because are things that require a change of paradigm in order to understand them well. One example outside of the Buddhist context is one time I was reading about the meaning of a quantum computer. And when I was reading about this quantum computer, basically what happens is I will tell you what I understood and what I didn't understand, basically. More is what I didn't understand than what I understood, but anyhow. What happened is that a normal computer works in the binary system. Binary system means the logics go on basis 1 and 0, exist and don't exist, basically. So everything, all the calculations, all the processing, everything is based on exist and don't exist, and all the possible combinations of exist and don't exist. Okay? The quantum computer don't work on a binary system, but it works on what they call qubits, quantum bits. A qubit has 4 possibilities, not 2. No, normally a normal binary system bit has 2 possibilities, 1 or 0, exist or don't exist, basically. A quantum computer, a quantum processor, we have quantum bits, a qubit, we have 4 possibilities. The possibilities are exist, don't exist, exist and don't exist at the same time, and a 4th one which I couldn't understand. Okay? Because I got stuck at the point that exist and don't exist at the same time. And I got stuck there, and I started reading and reading again and again and again and again. I was not reading a very extensive explanation, it was a short one. But still, I was trying to grab at it. And I simply couldn't. Why? Because it goes beyond my paradigm. So whenever we get to something that is beyond our paradigm, it takes time to understand. We need to repeat it again and 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 again until it slowly opens the ways in our mind and we are able to start to see like the light somewhere. We start to change our paradigm. And we can only understand it truly when we actually make a change of paradigm. Okay? This is why it's something that takes time. It's why it's something that is not just understand and that's enough. And when we talk about emptiness, about the lack of inherent existence, shunyata and so on, it means changing the paradigm. That's why it's something that takes time. That's why it's something that we need to listen from different perspectives again and again and try and reflect until there's a moment where we say, wow. Then pass some time, we forget again. Then we need to go again and again and again and again, then suddenly again, wow. It's like if we open our eyes to a different paradigm, and suddenly we can see it. But then what happened? We are so conditioned to the other way that we go back again. Then we need to do it again, the process, so that we go again through it again and again, okay? So this is one of the reasons why, as we go talking about the subject, we repeat it so many times, and at the same time, it's like trying to access the same point from different perspectives. Okay? And in this case, Lama Tsongkhapa is bringing us like, what are the wrong ways of seeing reality, of looking for the true nature of reality? Okay? And remember, the reason why we do all of this and want to change our paradigm is because the paradigm, which is the worldview in which we live, determines the way we relate to everything. So in the moment we change our paradigm, we change the way we relate to reality. And by that, we change the way we act, the way we think, the way we do everything. And it makes a big, big difference. And in other words, the root of our suffering is the paradigm of inherent existence in which we live. This is like trying to make it simple. Okay? Well, yesterday we were reading question 51. I made a short explanation of question 51. Then I was about to give the Italian version, and then we needed to stop. So I will start today from the Italian version of question 51, which I already gave the short explanation in English yesterday. Okay? So, as we were seeing yesterday in question number 51, the main point that comes here is the fact if in the moment that actually we, how to say, the question is basically, how is the correct way to meditate on the lack of inherent existence? Is there the need of a logical process, or is something that comes spontaneous, possible to do in a spontaneous way? And because there are traditions that believe that there is a way of meditating that by taking away every conceptual thought, leaving the mind free of conceptual thoughts, we can actually, by that state, bring the mind to its true nature, and by that realize the lack of inherent existence, realize the true nature of reality. And what happens is that, according to Lama Tsongkhapa, to Nagarjuna, to Buddha himself, actually this is not possible, because basically what happened is that I have already explained some of this yesterday, but the point is that, very briefly, our mind is ignorant since the beginningless time. If I just take away all the conceptual thoughts and I remain, my mind will like in a raw way, without any other thing, like completely, with the mind free of every conceptualization and so on, I still am there with my mind. And my mind, in a subtle level, non-conceptual level, is still ignorant, still grasps at inherent existence. So it's not the solution. It's a beautiful meditation, and it's extremely useful to meditate of eliminating all the conceptual thoughts. It's something very useful. But it's a basis to develop shamatha, to develop pure state of concentration. It is not the actual meditation on the true nature of reality. That's the main point here. And when we simply observe that the thoughts are constantly changing, that's meditating on the impermanence of the mind. It's not meditating on the true nature of our mind. Okay? So this is one of the important things for us to understand, that there is a process that we need to follow and that we can follow, which is first listening, then we need to comprehend, and here comes the part of understanding the many logics that is here. So I will just read quickly the answer, and then we will go again. Yesterday I already read it once. I will just read quickly once again. The entity or the nature of the mind, being momentary, being impermanent, is how Arya Nagarjuna views it. His personal instruction is, those accustomed or familiarized with the definitive meaning, which means those that once have already been familiarized with the meaning of the lack of inherent existence, with the correct meaning of emptiness, familiarized with scriptural authority, with the texts of the great masters, and with the logic that regards the lack of inherent existence, should meditate. And here the translator adds, that regardless of whatever appearance that all phenomena, from form to omniscience, dawn, they all do not exist inherently. So, with logic should meditate with the reasoning which refute production from the four extremes of existence, non-existence, the five reasoning, the seven reasonings, the reasonings of dependent relation, and that of being free from a truly existent one and many, and so on. So these are the different forms of logics that were taught by Nagarjuna, and that I had a beautiful opportunity to study them, but we are not going to go through them right now. And one of them, which is called the king of all logics, is when we say, Shilam nan su chuchen den permete, tende limbe echir, which says the basis, the path, and the result, or the glass, just to say whatever. It lacks inherent existence, or it doesn't exist truly, because it is interdependent. So we need to first understand what's the meaning of being interdependent. And here we can understand that in being interdependent, it means depending on causes and conditions, depending on its own parts, depending on the basis of imputation and the imputation of the name. This is like what's the meaning of being interdependent. And when something is interdependent, it cannot be of inherent existence. So what happened is that I said, take for instance the glass, take for instance the flower. It appears to me as being of inherent existence, but it is not. Why? Because it is interdependent. This is the logics that we follow. Okay? And it's only through this process of logics that we can realize emptiness. We need to go through this process of understanding also. Or both those learned ones and those unlearned ones should examine that with parts, that without parts, the basis of imputation, imputed phenomenon, conception, the mode of appearance, and the mode of abidance individually, and that their nature, free from being a truly existing thing, could be applied to everything from the Buddha level to the level of hell and meditate. Which means we should meditate that everything that exists, pure and impure, lacks true existence. And as we said, what do we mean by true existence? We mean something that exists just as it appears to us. But how does reality appear to us then? It appears to us as existing inherently, objectively. It's the example we gave of the sounds the other day. When I play the bell, how does the sound appear to us? As being the same sound that we're all listening, or it appears to us as each one of us listening to a different sound? We are listening to the same. But if we start to analyze, we will see that the experience of each one of us is completely different. The actual sound that arrives to us is different, the vibration of the air. The eyes, the ear side is different. The sense power, the consciousness is different. The discrimination, the name that we attribute is different. So it's a different phenomena that we perceive. Analyzing. Without analyzing, yes, it's the same. But if we stop to analyze, we will see that it's not like that. So, in other words, reality appears to us as if it is completely objective. For example, when I see a person, how does the person appear to me? As existing objectively, independently of me. You are there, I am here. Or you appear to me as being of interdependent reality and subjective. So I know that when I see you, actually you reflect my own projections and preconcepts and experiences and so on. We don't have that perception, right? But actually, are we able to see anyone independently of our own selves? No. So actually, whenever I see you, up to a certain level, I am seeing a reflection of myself. Okay. Analyzing is like this. Without analyzing, you say, you are crazy. What are you saying? You are you, I am I. What are you saying? But the fact is that I am totally unable, as every one of us is, of looking to someone else or to anything and to perceive the other completely free from oneself. It's not possible. So, reality doesn't exist truly in the sense that it doesn't exist as it appears to exist. That's what we mean by that. So we need to meditate that everything lacks true existence in the sense that it appears in a way that actually it does not exist. What is this way? It appears as existing inherently, objectively, independently, when actually it is subjective, interdependent. Okay? And the text continues. By leaving things just for good looks, one cannot really seize the conceived object of conception grasping at self. Gomjok chebe danzingi shenyogo parminula. Which means, by just letting go the mind away from every conceptual thought, one is not able to let go away, to cease the grasping of an inherent existing self. That's not enough. Just to let go, he is saying this, Gomjok chebe danzigi shenyogo peminula. Just by letting go the conceptual thoughts, even related to the self, this is not enough. It's not a matter of preconceptions only. It's a matter of every conceptual thought. Okay? Where we have like, okay, what happened yesterday? What will happen tomorrow? Why is this like this? Why is this like that? Blah, 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 blah. All this inner talking. When we completely let it go and we just rest within the nature of ourself, this is the idea. But by doing that, it's not enough to abandon the grasping at an inherent existing self. Due to watching the gradual rising of conceptualization, it vanishes. So, to assert that this is the seeing of the natural phase of Dharmakaya, and that this is the realization of the nature of all phenomena, emptiness, is a mistake in all senses. However, meditating in that way is a positive thing for achieving the calm abiding of the mind. So just taking away the conceptualization is a beautiful thing, is a good thing to develop calm abiding, to develop a good level of concentration. It brings calm, it brings well-being, it brings many positive things. But it's not meditating on the true nature of reality. Okay? I think this is quite clear. So I just like to add one thing before we continue. When we talk about meditating on the true nature of reality, there is 3 steps to do that, okay, which we call Tösam Gomsum, in which we need to develop Töchung Gesherab, Samchung Gesherab, Gomchung Gesherab. It's three levels of discriminative awareness, or 3 levels of wisdoms that we need to develop. Okay, which is the wisdom of listening, the wisdom of comprehending, and the wisdom of meditating. The first one regarding emptiness is that, first one, the wisdom of listening, is then when we start to listen about, all phenomena lack inherent existence. They appear as if they were objective, but actually they are subjective. Reality doesn't exist as it appeared to us, and so on. What we have been saying these days. And then when we get to the conclusion within ourselves, oh yes, reality does not exist truly. Reality doesn't exist inherently. Everything lacks inherent existence. Reality does not exist subjectively as it appears to me. When we are sure about that, but we do not yet understood really why, but we still are sure about it, which means when we have in Tibetan we call yiche, which is a correct assumption about it, okay, which is when we are sure about something without having any logical reasoning or any direct experience. This is a correct assumption. So when we have a correct assumption about emptiness, this is called the wisdom of listening. It means we have listened enough. Okay? Next step, we need to develop the wisdom of comprehension. Samchum Gesherab. The wisdom of comprehension comes when we develop what we call in Tibetan Jepatsema. Jepatsema is called the inferential valid cognition. An inferential valid cognition, basically, it is when we understand something through a correct valid logic. That's why the text here was talking about the many different logics that we need to follow. In other words, in the first step of the correct assumption, I believe in something simply because someone told me and it looks correct, I feel it's right. But if someone asks me why, I will answer because the Lama told me, because Nagarjuna told me, because that's what Buddha taught. I don't have my own conviction about it yet. We develop the wisdom of comprehension when we have our own conviction about it. It becomes our own understanding. Where independently who said what said, I know that phenomena lack inherent existence because they are interdependent. And this is something deep within myself. When I have this understanding, that moment I have concluded the wisdom of comprehension. After that, I need to develop the wisdom of meditation. The wisdom of meditation, it means now that I have a conceptual, logical understanding, wonderful, now I need to familiarize myself with that thought so that it stops being only conceptual and it becomes spontaneous and deep. So to do that, I need to follow the process of logics, reach the conclusion, and remain single-pointed, concentrated on that conclusion. when I'm able to develop a single-pointed concentration of shamatha, which means on emptiness, which means I'm able to rest my mind on the lack of inherent existence without any distraction or mental dullness. And this brings a state of pleasure to the body and the mind. When I'm able to develop the state also called karma binding, at that moment I develop the wisdom of meditation on emptiness. The wisdom of meditation needs to develop more and more until it transforms into vipassana, which means the union of single-pointed concentration and analysis together. When this is developed, after a certain time, meditating on it again and again and again and again and again, the object of meditation, which is still conceptual, which is the mental image of the lack of inherent existence, and the actual lack of inherent existence start to get more near to each other, until there is a moment where the practitioner can have an experience of emptiness, of the lack of inherent existence, that is total non-conceptual. This is a direct experience, which we call ngosum kitsema, or neljor ngosum in this case, which is a direct valid cognition, or a yogic cognition. And this is the moment where the practitioner reaches the so-called path of seeing. That's when the practitioner gets out of samsara because realizes truly emptiness. This is the process. So it's quite clear. First, listen, have a correct assumption. Second, understand it, have no doubt about it anymore. Third, sit in the cushion, meditate, develop single-pointed concentration, take away distractions from your life, and put the main goal of life to realize emptiness. And by that, gradually it will come. Okay? I think it's quite clear, no? There is a process there. Okay. We'll just go briefly through question 52. Okay, before lunch. Kalte tombe tatsu yintu chuna yang, niento deniki tombe tatsu le mapak shugnas chisun. Short question, which goes, even if I admitted that that is the mode of viewing emptiness, and that it is not superior to that of the two groups of Hinayana schools, what would you say? So the question here is, in other words, what is the difference of the realization of emptiness, of the lack of inherent existence, between the Mahayana and the Hinayana schools? Because we are not talking about the motivation Mahayana, Hinayana. There are four different schools of philosophy, which is the Vaibhasika, the Sautantrika, the Chittamatra, and the Madhyamika. Okay? So basically, what is the main difference between the perception of reality of emptiness according to the Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika, the two first schools, and the Chittamatra and Madhyamika? What is the main difference? Is there any difference between them? And then here, Panchen Rinpoche answers briefly and says, also to view, answer first in Tibetan. Semgi kechi ngachi la tawang duche kechi kis, jikchir mikta sembadang, tungi tongni gomba mi, che du nigi debatar, takchi rawan chendang ni, rangya tube zeyo gi, da gok tsuldan drawala. Also to view the previous moment and successive moment of the mind is to think of the impermanence of mind, because a compounded phenomenon disintegrates momentarily. It is not that one meditates on emptiness during the sessions. It is similar to the way of negating the self that is permanent, unitary and independent, and that the substantially existing self, which is self-sufficient according to the Vaibhasika and Sautantrika. Basically, what he's saying here, I'm going to try to make it brief, okay? The difference is that according to the Vaibhasika and Sautantrika schools, the first two schools, when we talk about meditating on the lack of inherent existence of the self, on the true view of the self, they have two levels of the lack of the correct view of the self, which is, first of all, Takchi Rawanching Dagitonga, and the second is called Kansarangetu Bezeyu to Drubetonga. Takchi Rawanching Dagitonga means seeing that the self doesn't exist permanently, as unique, as being unique, or as being all-powerful. Okay? So omnipotent. So basically, it's very similar to the idea that some people have of God, of there being someone, one entity that is unique, that is omnipotent, and that at the same time, and is permanent also. So this doesn't exist. This is one first level. But it's also related to our own self, seeing that I will always exist and I don't change, having the feeling that I am not interdependent, so I can do anything I want. Somehow I'm not depending with the rest of reality around me. And that somehow I am, when we say unique, there is no difference. I am the only one in this way. I'm unique somehow. So this view, generally speaking, refers mainly to the general view that some traditions have of God, okay? Saying that this type of being cannot exist. And the more deep way, when it talks about the correct view of the self, it talks that the self doesn't exist as a self-existing entity, which in Tibetan is called Tzeyo. All phenomenon can be divided into two types, which we call Takyo and Tzeyo. Rangi ngebala rangi chashe shengebala te goba Takyo, rangi ngebala rangi chashe shengebala te mi goba Tzeyo. Which means, Takyo is a phenomena that in order for it to be perceived, it depends on one of its parts being perceived first. For example, a person. When we look to someone, in order for me to see them, to perceive the person, do I perceive the person as a whole, or first I need to perceive the face, or the arm, or the form, or the sound, or something first? When I see someone, how does it happen? When I look at the flower, do I see first one part of the flower, then I can see the flower, or it just appears as a whole? I see the whole, but in order to see the whole, I must see a part. Okay? For example, time. When I perceive any aspect of time, do I perceive time as a whole? For example, when I observe a second, am I observing time? When I observe an hour, am I observing time? Do I perceive first one part of time in order to reach time? No. Space. It doesn't matter. Space, it doesn't matter how big, how small, is always space. So this, and the mind also. Any moment I perceive any part of the mind, I am already perceiving the mind. When I perceive a part of the person, am I right away perceiving the person? Not necessarily. First I listen to the voice, then I get to the person. First I see the hand, then I get to the person. First I see the face, then I get to the person. Okay? So, the fact is that Kansarangya tube Tzeyo to Drubetonga is that the self doesn't exist as a self-existing entity that does not depend on its parts in order to be perceived and in order to exist. This is the view from the Hinayana schools, the Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika, which, similar to the aspect of emptiness, of impermanence, it is meditating on the lack of the self existing as an independent entity that, in order to be perceived, needs its parts. But it's not the lack of inherent existence itself. So, still is not the ultimate view. Okay? In order to go into details on that, we need to go more deeply, more slowly. That's why I said we'll just go briefly through this question right now. Okay? But it is a very interesting view also, because normally when we think about the self, it looks like something completely solid. But when we see, even for us to perceive our own self, when we think about me, I, we always need to perceive ourselves through one of our parts. Or it's because I feel the body, or it's because I feel one part, or I have a thought and I observe one aspect of the mind, or because there is a memory or a sensation or whatever. We go always through one of our 5 aggregates in order to reach the self. Okay? Even though it's like this, our perception very often is that the self is one whole thing solid. Okay? So this is the very, very briefly the meditation according to the first 2 schools on the lack or on the non-existence of the self. The self doesn't exist as an autonomous entity, something that exists independently of the rest. Okay? So this is just very briefly bringing here to say, yes, there is a difference on meditation. No? That the 2 first schools, they have one view and then they do not meditate. Actually, on the first 2 schools, the main object is to meditate on the lack of true existence of self, which has a different meaning than in the Mahayana schools. Then when we go to the Mahayana philosophical schools, then we make the lack of true existence of self and the lack of true existence of phenomena. We add the lack of true existence of reality around us. This is not present in the first 2 schools, the Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika. Anyhow, the main point here is to say, yes, there is a difference. It's not everything the same. We need to understand what is this difference. We are not going to go through that right now because it's a long process. But every school is like one different step of the same staircase, helping us to gradually reach the correct view of reality. That's why all of them are very important. Okay? But okay, we just leave here for now. Otherwise, if we start entering into other parts, then it's maybe too long. Okay? So, just to conclude, I like to excuse myself in a way because many of the things that we're seeing, I'm not going into details about them because it takes time, you know. If we would take, for example, this question, really to understand it well, we need to go to take other texts. I have the text and the commentary on the Abhisamaya Alankara, and go, for example, to see what is the Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika view, how it is, why, and so on. To check the previous question, we need to go through, for example, what are the 7 logics, reasoning of emptiness, take the text of Nagarjuna, the commentary of Lama Tsongkhapa, go through it in detail, understand it, and so on. And this takes very much time. It is possible, but we would need, everybody would need to give up his job for at least 4 or 5 years, and need to dedicate full time for that. If we are here, we take only for that. We don't do anything else. We dedicate full time, more or less 6 days a week, 11, 12 hours a day, 11 months a year, more or less. If we do that for 4 or 5 years, then we can go into all these details, no? Which is possible to do, but I don't see it right now as the possibility. So that's why I prefer now we just go more superficially through it, but at least we can start opening our mind to all of this. And we can see that meditating on emptiness, there are many different levels of meditation, which are all good, but they are not necessarily the meditation on the emptiness. They are not necessarily the meditation on the lack of inherent existence itself. Okay? Well, so we will conclude here for today. Then tomorrow, I think we continue. And most probably tomorrow we will do teachings both morning and afternoon. So then we can go a little bit more with the text. Okay? Quindi. Yeah. Jetsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar chinle chochur gepadang Losang tempe dreme sasomgi drove Michel tatu ne gyurch Nimo dele tsendele Nime kuyan delek shin Ninsen takto delek pe Concho sumke jingi lo. Concho sumke ngodrup sol. Concho sumke rashi shon. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e colmare il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. De sol a sol, à noite ou ao meio-dia, possam as três joias conceder-nos suas bênçãos. Possam as três joias ajudar-nos a alcançar todas as realizações. Possam as três joias espalhar muitos sinais auspiciosos no caminho de nossas vidas. Al amanecer o al anochecer, por la noche o durante el día, puedan las tres joyas concedernos sus bendiciones. Puedan ayudarnos a obtener todas las realizaciones y colmar el sendero de nuestras vidas con muchos signos de buenos auspicios. Omahun Dimbalame Sangye Rinpoche, Kyobalame Tamche Rinpoche, Dimbalame Gendo Rinpoche, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chepabu, Locho Sambo Pagyo Trashipa, Tuche Tempe Trinle Yarngot, Pegye Drolo Zambe Zebrache, Pande Lame Shela Chepab, Kanshi Drimba Tsamge Chinangi, Parche Kunsele She Trinlen, Sozekyache Shukne Ringatse, Tensum Kordan Chela Chepabul, Kenam Chuchin Soa Tabe Tu Daso Kantu Nebe Sachoter, Nedan Ulpon Tapson Shiwada, Chedan Trashi Pelwar Zedu